The slap in the face. Robert Kraft solicitation story is 3 days old, and if police in South Florida prove their case against the Patriots owner, I believe he'll be suspended by Commissioner Roger Goodell. Without any new weekend news on the case, I'll lead this week with the official start of draft season. The first round of the 2019 NFL Draft kicks off in Nashville 2 months from tonight. The first day of the week-long NFL Scouting Combine is Tuesday in Indianapolis. So it's a good time for college football know-nothings like me to start the learning process on the new names that will be household names in the pro football world by late April. This is not setting up to be a dramatic year in the draft, or in the run-up to the draft, except for one thing: where Kyler Murray goes. The undersized 5'9" 7/8" Oklahoma says quarterback set college football on fire last fall and could go anywhere from the first overall pick, Arizona, to 4th, Oakland, to 7th, Jacksonville, to 13th, Miami, to 15th, Washington, or to a slot somewhere else after a trade. I covered Murray in depth last week and will spend most of my time here on the other 330 or so players in Indianapolis this week. One bit of Murray news before we move on. The new Mike Mayock at NFL Network, Daniel Jeremiah, talk about big shoes to fill, told me over the weekend that he heard Murray has bulked up to 203 pounds from his OU playing weight of 190. And calling around over the weekend, I heard it was 206. That is significant. Here's why. Talking to NFL people about Murray, as I wrote last week, there was worry that Murray had more of a Mookie Betts build in college than a Russell Wilson physique. Meaning Murray was not only small, but also slight. If Murray has spent the past 5 or 6 weeks bulking up, that would play in his favor at the Combine and in completing scouting reports on a complex prospect, because teams want to see a thicker player than Murray was at OU. Theoretically, it would mean he'd be more equipped to withstand the pounding he'll obviously have to face in the NFL. I spoke to 2 longtime NFL personnel men and 3 media folk, Jeremiah, Mel Kiper of ESPN and Matt Miller, a rising authority with Bleacher Report, for draft info in advance of Combine Week. For more, please listen to the Peter King Podcast with Jeremiah and Miller, dropping Wednesday. One note before we start: it was cool to hear Jeremiah pay homage to the new general manager of the Oakland Raiders, Mayock, something he wanted to do before we started discussing draft nuts and bolts. You'll enjoy that on the podcast. He was a good teammate, said Jeremiah, and as good of a dude as everyone at home thinks he is. Now for a few takes on the 2019 crop of collegians. The best player in the draft: Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa, injured his senior year in high school, torn ACL, injured this year, core muscle surgery, but he's my highest-rated player, Kiper said of the Ohio State defensive end. Great bend, great motor, said Jeremiah. When I watch Nick, I see the exact same moves as his brother, Chargers pass rusher Joey Bosa. Pluses: 17.5 sacks in 29 college games. Great instinct. The minus: season-ending injuries in 2 of his past 4 football seasons. The quality: really strong defensive draft, Kiper said. Deep at defensive line. Deep through 3 rounds. Good running back and receiver depth in rounds 2 through 5, Jeremiah. If you're in the hunt for difference makers on the defensive line, and overall depth on the offensive line, you're going to feel great about this draft. Offensive line-wise, there's no Joe Thomas, no Jonathan Ogden, but there's depth. For Jeremiah, 10 of his top 19 prospects in this draft are front 7 defensive players, including his top 4, Bosa, Alabama defensive tackle Quinnen Williams, Kentucky pass rusher Josh Allen and Clemson defensive tackle Christian Wilkins. Luck, Getty Images. The passer's not the quality of 2018, when quarterbacks went 1-3, 7, 1-0, 3-2 in round 1. On his big board, Jeremiah has Kyler Murray 14th, Ohio State's Dwayne Haskins 18th, Missouri's Drew Lock 26th and Duke's Daniel Jones 32nd. Those are ratings, not a projection of where Jeremiah thinks they'll go. I'm hearing Haskins and Murray, in some order, are solid top 10 picks. Haskins is a pure pocket passer, Jeremiah said. If he were to have come out 10 years ago, we'd be talking about him as a surefire top 5 pick. He just doesn't move around very well. When he has to move off his spot he really struggles. Jeremiah loves Locke's arm but not his overall mechanics. His feel are kind of all over the place, he said. On Jones, Jeremiah thinks his grade will be mixed on different draft boards, with team that want a power arm downgrading him. The injury mysteries. Oklahoma receiver Marquise Brown, Liz Frankfoot surgery, won't run full speed till August, but he might have been the fastest guy at the combine had he been fit enough to run. I remember scouting Deshaun Jackson at Cal, and this is a clone, Jeremiah said. Brown will be a late first-round gift to some team. Mississippi State defensive Jeffrey Simmons likely would have been a top 10 pick before tearing his ACL recently. How far he slides will be a big, pre-draft story. Kiper loves Bryce Love, the Stanford running back recovering from December ACL surgery. Love could be a fourth-round bargain in a draft full of middle-round backs. The meat of the draft rounds 2 and 3. It's a good year to have 6 picks between 32 and 101, which is where the rich get richer Patriots find themselves. Said Jeremiah. You look at the Baltimore Ravens picking at 22. They have no second-round pick. To me, if the Ravens pick at 22 I will buy you dinner the next time we're together. I know the new GM, Eric DeCosta, taking over there from Ozzie Newsome, is a very bright guy. The value in this draft is in that second-round range. I would be surprised a team like Baltimore doesn't take pick 22 and look to get out of there and see if they can flex some more picks there in that second-round range. The skill players' general consensus, one back Josh Jacobs of Alabama, in the top 20. There's a feel that, in a league when 2016 Offensive Rookie of the Year Alvin Kamara was the 67th pick in a draft and 2016 NFL rushing champion Kareem Hunt was the 86th, that you're fine getting a good back, like Florida Atlantic's Devin Singletary or Iowa State's David Montgomery or Penn State's Miles Sanders, somewhere between picks 40 and 100. Running back value is in the 2nd to the 5th round, Kiper said. As for wideouts, it's another deep year in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Oklahoma's Brown and Mississippi's DK Metcalf lead the way on Jeremiah's board. TJ Hawkinson, Getty Images. Interesting that Jeremiah has 3 tight ends among his top 25 players. Iowa's TJ Hawkinson, 5, Iowa's Noah Fant, 23, and Alabama Irv Smith Jr., 25. Yes, that's 2 tight ends from Iowa in the first-round conversation. Fant will likely be the fastest tight end at the combine. He has run 4.64, and Hawkinson is athletic with a Mark Bavaro blocking streak. Add to that the fact that NFL teams love players from Iowa because they value Coach Kirk Ferentz' NFL preparedness training. No school has ever produced 2 first-round tight ends in the same year. Cautionary tale: there won't be many players who make or break anything in the next week, so throw anything you hear like that out of your mental window. I'll tell you why. Last year, Oklahoma tackle Orlando Brown was Mayock's number 2 rated tackle in the draft entering the combine, and he had a disastrous performance. He ran a nice like 4.85 40-yard dash, and did a feeble 14 reps of the 225-pound bench press. Brown was ridiculed. The Ravens picked him in the 3rd round. He played 15 games at tackle for Baltimore. Pro Football Focus had a higher 2018 grade for Brown than for the following zillionaire tackles: Trent Williams, Taylor Lewin, Jack Conklin, Nate Solder, Taylor Decker, Jason Peters and Quarty Glenn. So chill on conclusions drawn this week. NFL Network's complete coverage at the Combine kicks off Monday, and position group coverage begins Friday. ESPN will have a live show from 1 to 3 p.m. featuring Kiper and other network analysts Saturday on ABC during the quarterback drills. Friday evening, an estimated 8.15 million American TV viewers heard anchor Lester Holt lead the NBC Nightly News this way. Breaking news tonight, shockwaves as the billionaire owner of the New England Patriots, Robert Kraft, is charged in a day spa prostitution sting. On Saturday morning, the 4 million subscribers, newspaper and web, to the New York Times read this headline above the fold on the front page: Patriots owner facing charges after sex sting. That's Commissioner Roger Goodell's morning paper. Inside, in the lead story of the Times Sports section, respected NFL correspondent Ken Belson wrote, "However the case is resolved, the episode is an embarrassment to a league that likes to portray itself as a pillar of moral rectitude but has struggled to shake an image that its players, employees and team owners treat women poorly." Kraft faces charges of solicitation, blared the front page of Kraft's hometown Boston Globe, which landed on newsstands all over his beloved six-state New England region. The NFL's personal conduct policy mandates that owners and club officials will be subject to more significant discipline for violations of the policy and reads, "Everyone who is part of the league must refrain from conduct detrimental to the integrity of and public confidence in the NFL, prostitution, sex trafficking." Video evidence of Kraft's involvement, according to police. Those negative of headlines and news coverage, focused on one of the most important owners in recent league history, on the steward of the franchise that has won more Super Bowls in one era, 6, than any franchise in league history, and leading the news on a day with Washington imploding. Add to that the specter of the NFL's incessant recruitment of women as fans and consumers and fantasy football players, and add to that the feeling by many in the outer boroughs of the league that Kraft is especially close to the league office. It just ratchets up the pressure on Goodell's prospective judgment in the case. In Goodell's 12.5 years as commissioner, he hasn't faced a situation like this one, which makes it difficult to forecast what Goodell will do to Kraft, if the charges are true. But there are clues. Robert Kraft. Getty Images. Everything about the charge of Kraft on 2 occasions soliciting a prostitute, one used against her will in a case of human trafficking, has to be prefaced with, if the cases arising from a strip mall spa in Jupiter, Florida, against a cadre of accused men have not been publicly proven, and we're reminded by the Jussie Smollett case to let the facts surface before passing judgment. Police in Jupiter, Florida, have alleged Kraft twice frequented a spa accused of prostitution, and the police say they have incriminating video of Kraft. A spokesman for Kraft categorically denied involvement in any illegal activity. The league said it was aware of the case and was monitoring developments, the NFL's euphemism for, "We're buying time," so that's where it stands this morning. But if the charges against Kraft prove to be true, I believe the Ray Rice precedent will come into play. And that would not be good news for Kraft. I believe if Kraft is found guilty, Commissioner Roger Goodell couldn't give Kraft a hefty fine alone. The problem with a fine of Kraft, the last sitting owner to be seriously sanctioned by Goodell, Indianapolis's Jim Irsay, was suspended for 6 games and fined $500,000 for driving while impaired. That sort of fine, on its own, would be the ultimate slap on the wrist to a man Forbes says is worth $6.8 billion. To be exact, $500,000 would be 1/14 of 1% of Kraft's worth. Next to nothing, really. That's part of the reason why I believe Kraft, if he is guilty, is more likely than not to be suspended. Think back to the Rice case in 2014. Rice, a Ravens running back, had an altercation with his fiancée at an Atlantic City hotel, and Goodell suspended Rice for 2 games. The light punishment was derided by the public, particularly women's groups, and Goodell looked feckless when video of the altercation surfaced and showed Rice decking his fiancée with a single punch. The league revised its punishment, suspending Rice indefinitely, but by then it was too late. Goodell was ripped nationally for running an initially shoddy investigation of the case, and for being soft on domestic violence. So now, if Kraft is found to have used prostitutes being employed against their will in a human trafficking scheme, the commissioner will have 2 choices: go light on Kraft if there's no proof he knew the woman or women were employed against their will. That seems unlikely. When the NFL suspends players for using PEDs, even if the supplement was bought over the counter at a reputable vitamin store, players can't use the excuse that they didn't know a substance banned by the NFL was part of the supplement. Similarly, I doubt Goodell would accept a defense if "I didn't know the women were part of a trafficking scheme." Someone already involved in an illegal activity would not garner empathy for pleading ignorance there. Give Kraft a significant sanction, a multi-week or longer suspension from all Patriots and league activities, and a fine. This would show the league taking a stand against the burgeoning American issue of human trafficking. It is already the cause of highly respected Colts coach Frank Reich, as well as showing the public it won't kid glove a high-profile owner. I think it would be the latter. Again, the case is still unproven, and it's highly likely Goodell will wait to see the corroborating evidence. But if found culpable, Kraft might be wise to suggest a third option. He has been generous to important causes, small and large. In addition to a multi-week suspension, he could agree to lead an NFL initiative to help fight human trafficking, and provide significant seed money for the project. That might be one way to limit the amount of long-term personal damage. It's been reported that Kraft already has supported the fight against human trafficking with a $100,000 donation in 2015 to the Boston-based My Life My Choice, which supports human trafficking victims. This is a desperately needed cause in the United States and the world, and Kraft's renewed backing of the fight could be crucial in the fight. Some would suggest Kraft deserves to have his ownership of the team stripped. I don't see that happening. When Carolina owner Jerry Richardson was accused by former staff members of sexual and personal improprieties late in 2017 by Sports Illustrated, Richardson stepped away from the team and sold the franchise 6 weeks before the NFL fined him for his actions. Harboring a culture of intimidation inside his organization, and pressuring multiple female employees for sexual-related favors over a period of years, as Richardson did, could have led to him being stripped of his team. But Goodell never had to rule on that because Richardson voluntarily stepped away. Orchids of Asia Day Spa in Jupiter, Florida. Getty Images. What would wound Kraft deeply, if found guilty, is knowing the damage he'd have done to his name and his brand, and it would be the third strike against his dynasty. The Spygate scandal tarnished Bill Belichick in 2007, costing him $500,000 and the team a first-round draft choice, and the Deflategate scandal in 2015 got Tom Brady suspended for 4 games and cost the team another first-round pick. As this violation has nothing to do with the competitive aspects of football, it wouldn't be subject to draft pick penalty. Goodell would hand down a penalty he feels is just. But Kraft being found guilty would be the third strike against the best long-term team in modern football history, even though it would have nothing to do with football. One last point, if Goodell has to rule on Kraft, it will be watched as closely as any recent ruling he's made, by the football community and by women in many communities monitoring a business that has talked a good game about women but has not always walked the walk. It'd be naive to think Goodell's clumsy handling of Rice would not be brought up to him by a largely new staff of PR operatives inside the NFL. That matters. For now, the legal process will play out, in Jupiter, Florida, and in New England and inside the NFL offices in New York, and the consequences to a surprising story will be mulled. We're as equally stunned as anyone else, Jupiter Police Chief Daniel Kerr said Friday. He's not alone. I've made it a habit at the Combine in Indianapolis to have an event to meet and greet people who love football or follow me on Twitter, or both, and hopefully to raise a few bucks for a good local cause, by listening to me and some of my national sports writer friends talk football for a couple of hours. This year, I enlisted Colts coach Frank Reich to appear, so we could raise a little more money for a cause he is passionate about, Ascent 121, which aids victims of human trafficking in Indiana. Reich's a wonderful story, the underdog quarterback who won one of the greatest comebacks in NFL history, the 41-38 wildcard win in 1992, the underdog coordinator who thought he'd never get an head coaching job but finally did out of nowhere a year ago, and now the underdog head coach who led the Colts to a stunning playoff berth in 2018. And he would want you to know, a person who is championing an important cause in our society today, the fight against human trafficking. You can come and hear the Reich story, in conversation with me, at Sun King Brewery Friday at 5 p.m. in downtown Indianapolis. When Reich has to leave to do combine business at 6, I'll host a football chat with some of my friends in the national media. And you'll get a beer from Sun King, one of America's great craft breweries. Buy tickets here. Hope to see you there, to talk football and to support an important cause. If you've got any questions, please email me. They can hold out all the hope they want to. I'm going to play football. Oklahoma quarterback Kyler Murray on Saturday, on the Oakland A's, the baseball team that spent a first-round pick in the MLB draft last June on Murray, continuing to hope he will eventually choose to play baseball. 2. I might take their entire draft from them. It has to be something that cripples the organization. This is a black eye. You talk about conduct detrimental. Bart Scott, former Jets and Ravens linebacker, speaking on his WFAN radio show Friday about the penalty he thinks the league should give the Patriots for owner Robert Kraft being caught in a South Florida prostitution sting. The NFL has used draft choice penalties for football violations, not non-football violations. 3. He has to be suspended for at least a year. Bart Scott, on Kraft. You are what your record says you are. I'm not going to sit here and accuse anyone of racism, but the facts are what they are. We have to look at the opportunities that were given to minorities this latest round and see what can be done about it. Steelers president Art Rooney to Tim Graham of The Athletic, after the NFL's minority head coaches were halved, from 8 in 2018 to 4 in 2019, this offseason. Antonio Brown's stock is dropping fast and is as volatile as Bitcoin. Mike Lombardi of The Athletic. ESPN draft guru Mel Kiper has been covering the draft for 41 years, the last 36 for ESPN. This is something you don't know. This is the first NFL scouting combine he will actually attend. ESPN has been given access to the on-field drills this year for the first time, and so Kiper, who has watched the combine on TV for years, will go to Indianapolis and be present to see the Underwear Olympics, this night termed by some scouts for the combine. Kiper, on what he's learned about the important things in the scouting process leading up to the draft. I've learned it's all important, to a degree. But there are a few things I pay attention to in every player. Arm length is important. Getting your hands on guys, catching up when a guy gets past you. Even for corners it's important. Marlon Humphrey of the Ravens, long arms. T.J. Watt, Myles Garrett, long arms. Jared Allen, long arms were a big part of his game. I like the three-cone drill, because it measures change of direction, and that's so important at every position. I like speed, at every position. John Armstead was a 4.71 in the 40-yard dash guy and went in the third round. Darius Slay ran 4.36 and went in the second. There's reasons for that, but speed and quickness is valuable at every position. I think you've got to guard against changing your board a lot now, when the coaches get involved. Not that they don't know these prospects, but you've got to trust your scouts and the work they've done all year going from campus to campus. I've learned how important the undrafted free agents are every year. Maybe a guy you liked a lot didn't have a great senior year. Maybe he was hurt, or maybe he played hurt. Lots of guys play hurt in football. Was he playing through a hamstring? An ankle? You've got to be able to look at that and see through it. There are a lot of outliers in football, guys who might not fit or check every box. I wish I could just one year get the chance to sign 15 to 20 undrafted free agents after the 7th round, because I know some of those guys would be a lot better than not being drafted. I've made mistakes analyzing players. I really liked Jimmy Clausen when he came out of Notre Dame, and I was wrong about him. I thought he'd be accurate and tough and competitive, and that would make up for some of his arm issues. But in this business you're going to make mistakes. Part of the job. I remember back in 1996, the Rams had 2 first-round picks and took Lawrence Phillips and Eddie Kennison with the 6th and 18th picks. I said right then they should have taken Eddie George and Marvin Harrison, and they could have gotten both guys where they picked. Michael David Smith wrote about how the NFL should reconsider the system of compensatory draft choices, in part because it encourages smart teams to shed good but often not great players in free agency so they can save cap room and recoup valuable draft picks the following spring. He's absolutely right. Compensatory picks are awarded to teams a year after losing big money free agents. Let's look at this year's top 11 compensatory picks, 7 in round 3, 4 in round 4. That is all of the extra picks awarded in the first 170 picks in the 2019 draft. You'll see why the compensatory pick system might need to be revised. Compensatory picks awarded in round 3 and 4, total, 11. Compensatory picks awarded to 2018 playoffs teams in rounds 3 and 4, 7. The picks awarded in rounds 3 and 4, followed by the 2018 record of that team, plus the player that team lost to get the pick. Round 3 Washington, 7-9, Kirk Cousins, New England, 14-5, Nate Solder, Los Angeles Rams, 15-4, Tremaine Johnson, Los Angeles Rams, 15-4, Sammy Watkins, Carolina, 7-9, Andrew Norwell, New England, 14-5, Malcolm Butler, Baltimore, 10-7, Brian Jensen, round 4 Indianapolis, 11-7, Dante Moncrief, Dallas, 11-7, Anthony Hitchens, Atlanta, 7-9, Taylor Gabriel, Philadelphia, 10-8, Trey Burton. I mean, look at that list of lost players and tell me that the smart teams don't use compensatory picks as a farm system to replenish their roster and get rid of guys whose new contracts, by and large, don't come close to matching their mediocre, collectively, 2018 production. The betting site BetOnline listed these odds for possible length of suspension against New England owner Robert Kraft: 1 to 4 weeks, 2 to 1. 5 to 8 weeks, 5 to 4, 9 to 17 weeks, 7 to 5.